Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we are going to be starting a brand new series entitled The Skeptic and the Shrink. This is going to be something of the Psychologist's case for skepticism. Basically, in this series, we're going to be presenting a number of biases that exist in people's minds, or at least that psychologists claim or believe that exist in people's minds, which might lead you to suspect that you are not as justified as you think you are, or might lead you to be more likely to doubt your current position. Psychology has tested a number of phenomena known as cognitive biases, which are present in humans. Basically, these are documented and tested cases of irrational behavior that a statistically significant proportion of humanity exhibits. Or, in other words, they are a tendency in people to come to beliefs or come to do things irrationally that is statistically significant. So a wide number of people do these things which are irrational. And so if we notice that we're doing these irrational things and try to fight against them, we may end up doubting some of our beliefs and leaning more towards skepticism. So, in this series, we're going to argue that these cognitive biases make it more likely for a given person to overestimate their own ability to distinguish justified from unjustified beliefs and irrationally dismiss the possibility of being in a skeptical scenario. Note that these will not be deductively valid arguments, but rather more appeals to your intuition and kind of trying to give those staunch defenders of scientific naturalism a little bit of a sense that maybe you are wrong and give you some scientific proofs that perhaps you might want to doubt some of those things that you hold so dear. As the indirect skeptic should, what we're doing is we are taking on the mantle, we're taking on the position of the scientific naturalist and using their position, which says that science can confer knowledge and therefore psychology can confer knowledge, to show them that there's a few problems there, that psychology shows us that we're actually really, really fallible human beings. Okay? Now, one might object to this line of argument since if the skeptical claims are correct, then there's no reason to believe that science and psychology, which justifies these arguments, are the kinds of things which can confer justification. However, if science being justified implies that science is unjustified, we don't actually have a contradiction. We've simply proved that science is unjustified. Once again, this is the theme and the way that an indirect skeptic argues. This is the methodology of indirect skepticism. So basically, if psychology being justified implies skepticism, and skepticism implies psychology is not justified, then we can simply conclude that psychology is not justified. If we assume the position of scientific naturalism, that science confers knowledge, and that assumption, science then tells us a piece of knowledge that we have is that we don't in fact have knowledge, then we just don't have knowledge. We just have defeated the claims of scientific naturalism. And for reasons that we don't want to then say we know that scientific naturalism is false, check out my series on indirect skepticism. But basically, this is what we're going to show. We're going to show that psychology leads us to doubt some of the claims that science can provide us with this certain bedrock of knowledge. And so belief in scientific naturalism is going to eat itself and devolve into a contradiction. Basically, if our cognitive biases are so great that we cannot see past our own limitations, this seems like good reason to doubt our beliefs and justifications, or at least suspend judgment on some of our beliefs. Okay? Now, in this series, we are going to be looking at a number of these different cognitive biases. This is just an introductory video where we're going over kind of some of the main goals of the series, and we're going to now take a look at the different biases we will cover. So first off, we will cover confirmation bias, dealing with justification and reliability. Then we will look at the illusion of control and how that can affect skepticism and our beliefs about science and our own ability to create justified beliefs. Then we'll look at optimism bias and the duplication argument, kind of looking at, are you more likely to think that you're in the scenario where you're not deceived by an evil deceiver just because you have that optimism bias? And finally, we will look at the Dunning-Kruger Effect, basically why you are less capable than you think you are. That's the sum of this series. If you have more background in psychology than I do, I highly recommend that you comment on these channels, comment on these videos, help me out with this, because my background is more in philosophy, and we're going to be trying to kind of do the philosophical implications of these psychological phenomena. But if you have more information, more studies, or think that you can refute some of these biases, please, please, please offer it in the comments below, and I would love to look into it. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.